Welcome to Product Rising's monthly series, In the Lead. Joining Carmen for this month's conversation is Gyanda Sachdeva. She is the Vice President of Product Management at LinkedIn, currently heading up LinkedIn's consumer experience. She has spent over 16 years at LinkedIn, climbing the ranks from an API to group product manager to director, and for the past 6 years as a Vice President of Product Management. She's led product strategy, design and execution for LinkedIn's sponsored updates, as well as headed up LinkedIn's premium subscription, commerce, and services marketplace products. During her time at LinkedIn, Gyanda has had the opportunity to develop and grow as a product and a business leader. Now, she's navigating the challenges of effectively using AI to enhance the LinkedIn consumer experience and the changing role of product. Carmen wanted to understand the reality of product leadership in this time of uncertainty and change. She wanted to tap into Gyanda's experience to provide insight and guidance for everyone seeking to evolve and advance their skills and knowledge. Here is their conversation.
Well, I'm so excited to start off today's In the Lead discussion with Gyanda Sachdeva from LinkedIn. She has 15 or more years of experience at LinkedIn as a VP of Product Management, and she's been building products that have reached over 1 billion professionals worldwide. She leads LinkedIn's AI-powered member experiences, including the generative AI job seeker. And she's also, you can see her online talking about all the new algorithms. But I think you can look her up on her LinkedIn, obviously. But now is an amazing time to be speaking with her in this period of time where the PM role is changing and being redefined by AI. And I'm really excited to talk to Gyanda today about her journey and just sort of the broader question of what AI native leadership requires. So welcome, Gyanda. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Carmen. It's fun to be here.
Amazing. So I do want to drill into a little bit of your background, because I think that many folks who are in roles today or looking into roles today have different types of background. Can you just briefly walk us through what your journey has been? Really, like, what did you study and what were your roles like? Because I do think that you have a unique background from investment banking and onward.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So as you said, I did start my career in a completely different space, which was investment banking. I did that for a couple of years. And I think the unique experience there was that I graduated with my master's degree. Both my bachelor's and master's were in engineering, but I graduated in 2008, which was when the housing bubble was bursting and a lot of jobs were evaporating. So I remember that time being exceptionally challenging. And I know a bunch of people graduating now when jobs are changing super fast are facing something similar, perhaps even bigger scale. So I look back at that time as how it totally transformed how I thought about the workplace or how resilient it made me over the years. But regardless, I started my career off in investment banking in the technology sector. And then I think a few years in, I realized this is not, while I loved the people and the place, I realized it was not something I would want to do for the rest of my life. And then I started looking for roles, and the role I was attracted to were these roles that were operational in nature, so ops roles. They were biz ops, sales ops, finance ops, marketing ops, and partly because I had background in finance, but these roles were in tech companies, so they were, which was my engineering background, so they kind of brought the whole thing together. And so what I did, I joined LinkedIn in a biz ops capacity as an analyst. And then once again, I think within a year, realized, like the place where I'm finding the energy is actually in another organization within LinkedIn, and it was product. And it was an internal switch at the time, and I've since then been in product and really enjoyed working across enterprise and subscription and ads and consumer products over the last 16 years.
I think that's amazing. I think it's also when you're going through your own self-discovery of what you actually like or don't like in practice, and being out there and being able to try it. What do you think, some folks look at having a long tenure in an organization as not a great thing, and it's important to go to different places. And you've been at LinkedIn for 15 years. What do you think being at a company with long tenure has given you, and were there any trade-offs that you would call out?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get that question a lot. I mean, the reason why I have been here for as long as I have is because of the vision of the company and the people. It's just,
Mm.
it's very, very hard to find employer-employee fit. And I got lucky to have found it very early in my career, and I leave a good thing. But here's what I've seen over the years. From the outside, it looks like, I worked at one company. From the inside, it's felt like four at least.
Mm-hmm.
I joined pre-IPO, then we went public, then we, in an interesting plot twist, I guess, got acquired by Microsoft, and then there was a second wave of hypergrowth as a private company again. And so
Well,
it's required very different kinds of I guess leadership. And the thing that I keep going back to is that people who haven't spent enough time in one place tend to have um, the story of like parts of the elephant. Like they can touch like one part of the elephant and say, this is what it looks like in peacetime. This is what it looks like in wartime. And there are very, very few people who have spent enough time in one place to see what that whole journey looks like, the peacetime, the wartime, the rebuilding, and then, perhaps scaling. And so I think that part is very unique to people who have stayed in one place for a long time. And I always look for that when I am hiring leaders who have the pattern matching across multiple phases of a company. And then the second thing I think that's unique, especially in companies that have multiple products, is that it gives you the opportunity to go try and learn different products without changing the company.
mm-hmm.
And I think what is interesting in that is that you have to create your own inflection points. Like you have to decide at what point I kind of know about ads now. I want to try something else, and then you go to learn subscriptions. I've reached some point of like familiarity with this domain. Now I can go build a consumer product or enterprise product. And so, you grow not by changing companies, but by changing yourself, if that makes sense. And I think that's a very powerful skill to have, to be internally very consistent on, I'm going to own this for myself. And I think that stands out in people who stayed in one place for a long time.
Oh, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you've heard that, like, the two most stressful things in life, I think, are moving and changing jobs. And so
Yeah.
when you can do, and I think jobs meaning like changing companies and going through
Yeah.
the process. So the ability to be able to stay within your space and like even hold on to the folks who are your mentors and who are in your circle, and then be able to move into some a different product. And like you said, whether it's like working in platforms and then working in like consumer, it's, you have that ability to move around because you are established within that organization. So I think that's amazing. And I think, like, so when you came in, and I think you joined as part of the APM program. Were you part of that? That's amazing. So like at each level, like whether it's from APM to group PM or director, we know that the job fundamentally changes. I mean, it's like from each step, whether it's taking more responsibility on your skill sets have to change. So for you, at what transition did you have to unlearn the most, and sort of like what were those things? Because in certain roles, the thing that gets you there isn't necessarily the thing that's going to get to the next place. So like, what are those things that you've had to unlearn?
Yeah. Such a good question. Yeah, I did start off as an APM. I was, I think, in the first batch of two APMs. And so I was either the first or the second, I can't recall. But it's been a very interesting journey throughout that period, because you're right. Like the job, even though at the core of it, it's product management, it keeps changing on you because of the scope and what's expected of you. I think looking back, my hardest transition was the IC to manager transition.
Mhm.
And not everyone struggles with that, but I definitely did. I think for me, the realization that I had to do my job indirectly now was just funky. I had so much control over it when I was doing it myself, and then to do it through people was hard. I couldn't tell when my job was stopping and someone
Mhm.
else's was beginning. And so to be honest, like I think I remember a period of even feeling super insecure. Like, is this, am I doing this right? Is this enough value add for a team that, is seemingly talented themselves? And so I think that transition was hard. And the realization ultimately, which at some points every manager has to build their own management playbook. And I think the realization was that it's not about me doing more units of work now. It's about creating the conditions for people to do great work.
Mhm.
And that's a very different skill set than what an ICPM does. So I don't know. I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing at the time? And I mean, after that it becomes easier, but the first time you do it, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into this a little bit more, but
Yeah.
when you, even as describing that of you are not the one who's doing it, now you have to create, the space for others to be able to do it in this context of AI and agentic
Right.
AI and all of like being the manager of agents and so on and so forth. We'll jump into that, but I think that those key learnings probably really inform how we need to be leading in the future. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Sounds great.
I think so going into the AI, was there a specific moment when you realized that the AI was just not another shift? Like this was going to be something that was going to shape the PM role itself. And once you started to do that, what was the approach that you took to make that shift?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because AI itself has changed so many times in the last couple of years that what you're asking, I think, happens very frequently
Mhm.
now compared to what was happening before. But I think I was reflecting on like when did it first occur to me at least that oh my God, this is very different than what I'm used to. I think this may have been back in November perhaps of 2023 or somewhere around that time when, if you recall, when GPT-4 Turbo came out. I think it was a faster, cheaper version of GPT-4.
Yes.
Reasoning models hadn't yet come out, so these models were not showing you how the logic and the reasoning, but it was working still. And we were at the time trying to build a prototype internally of a product that a member could talk to about jobs insights and career insights and company context. And what was fascinating was even in that prototype, the answer you would get. So let's actually take an example. Let's say you were looking at a post about a company getting acquired, and a person who's reading the post is a CEO of a different company, and another person reading the same post is a recruiter at a different company.
Okay.
The summaries that we would show these two people based on who they are of the same exact piece of content, which is a acquisition, were different because the CEO's takeaway should be, what were the financials behind it? Was it a sound acquisition? Are they getting a lot of new products and IP? And the recruiter's takeaway is on the talent side, like who are they getting? Is this a good investment of their capital? And it was fascinating that the same product can now have infinite flavors based on who's reading it. And that's just one dimension of personalizing it. And then, of course, you take it to the, I think it's logical conclusion. You can have your own personalized teacher, you can have your own personalized doctor, you can have a personalized fitness coach. It was limitless. And so I remember that moment of like brainstorming with the team that, oh, like the same product can mean so many different things in the real world, and that was not possible before. And then I think the second relatedly was when we were building it, I did not appreciate how crazy the hallucinations would be.
Yeah.
And that changed. I think that changed just how we built. It was no longer, predictable. And previously we were so used to a heuristic, it's very deterministic outcome. And now it not only changes, but you don't know why, and you don't know what it's going to say next. And so I think just that created this moment that what we are building with now is a completely new set of primitives. We have never had these new problems before, and it will take a different kind of product mindset to go do that. And then, of course, since then, there will, everyone writes evals now, but it was the
Right.
beginning of that realization that, oh, there's going to be a moment where we have to make some decisions in a very different way, and it will never behave deterministically anymore. So I think those were like some moments of, oh, this feels quite different from how we've done product before.
Absolutely. So to drill into that, I mean, we're speaking about like now that we have these new primitives to work with, and these are the tools that we have, and there's so much more we can do. I can remember when we were just talking about like typical personalization
Yeah.
of a certain type of product. Now we can take this to many more dimensions and many more levels with even more precision. Right. So when you're thinking about the product role itself, I mean, you touched upon it a little bit of like talking about evals and the way that we're using the tools. How do you see that PM role changing within your team? And then as a follow-up, like with yourself as a leader of PMs in this like AI world, what are those different types of changes you're seeing? And how are you doing that within LinkedIn and within your teams?
Yeah, this is such a, I mean, I think th these moments of change, these platform shifts, um, they lead to so many other cascading changes over time. And the one that I love, Carmen, and you tell me, like as a product builder, if this relates, like one thing I love about technology shifts is that it changes human behavior in interesting new ways that are hard to predict. So I remember when the mobile app platform came out, and then apps started coming out.
Yep.
Everyone became so used to the fact that there must be an app for that. That for every use case, there must be an app. And it's not just must be an app, it's like that app is vertically integrated. So it's you can book a ride, you can see the reviews, you can leave a review, you can pay, like all in this one
Mhm.
little app that's built for this use case. That was fascinating. And then even more recently, the shift that we've seen with media consumption and short form content and video especially. I mean, 10 years ago, people did not consume as much short form video content, and now video has become the language of the internet. And this
Mhm.
is a big human behavior shift where the society has learned how not to just consume it, but to create it. There's so many people who create. So these are just interesting human shifts, that behavior shifts that were provoked by the technology shift. So I'm curious to see what the next wave of this looks like. My money is on voice, and we'll see how that plays out. But this idea that technology will change behavior is so fascinating, and no one really has the answer. So my only answer right now in terms of how should we change how we build is to create the space for very rapid experimentation. And
Mhm.
I think the underlying thesis being the more shots on goal you take, the higher the chance of actually getting that goal. And in reality, what that has meant for our teams is that we try to now build more openly and publicly. So instead of having, we used to have these update meetings where we'll go through the roadmap and plan ahead, etc. We don't do any 6 month planning anymore, hardly any quarterly planning because things are changing super fast. The other thing we've shifted to is a demo hour as opposed
Mhm.
to an update meeting. So now more and more people are coming and just demoing what they've built, both the actual product that a member will see, but also internal products that they're building for their own productivity. And the whole idea is that we just need to be able to share more of this and fail more publicly too, to create the space for rapid experimentation. So our goal, and my eng partner and I have been working through this, is to get past like the functional boundaries, the org boundaries, doesn't matter. It's just create the space for taking more shots on goal and leading with the demo, and instead of the docs and the mocks that we used to do back in the day, which has been great. I mean, it's been great to see people sign up for those demo hour slots and fight for like, oh no, I really want to fit in my 2 minute demo. And it's amazing because we actually go so far to say that we don't want a presentation. We want you to hook it in and just show us what it is. And it's been great to see the reaction so far. So hopefully this will continue.
I love that. Do you find that those skill sets are ones that need to be developed? I know as a PM, we're all should be comfortable demoing. We should be comfortable sort of like walking through, what we're building. And we have done a lot of testing, like lots of A/B testing. So continue to fail forward and fail faster. But in a way, it's almost hyper, right? You want to be able to put it out there, even if you haven't done like a long like roadmap planning or necessarily like the really deep PRDs that have been reviewed. There you can accelerate that component of the product life cycle. So for your folks, are you seeing that, or and people who are coming in, are you seeing that there's new skill sets that need to be honed? I'm not talking about obviously leveraging AI and having AI native skills, but what are those other types of skill sets in that development process that you're saying are most useful?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like there's a between like the brainstorm, the original idea, and the product being shipped, there are so many steps. And many of those steps are getting collapsed,
Mhm.
and which then increases the velocity of getting an idea to market, but also requires new ways to glue the whole thing together. While previously there were models that people were following. So one thing that we did, and we spent a lot of time on this last year, was this culturally this idea of full stack building. And the idea behind full stack building was that in a world where you will have access to AI tools, the functional domain expertise is less important. And what's more important is being able to solve the member needs. So, as an example, as a designer, if you have an idea, you should be able to do both the design and the product spec. As a
Mhm.
business development professional, because you're working with so many partners, you shouldn't have to depend on someone else to write a prototype for you or build you a mock. You can actually do it yourself and take it to the partner and say, hey, how does this look? Does this feel right? And that will become the opening of a new conversation. Or as a PM, and we've seen many examples of this. They're pushing PRs themselves in the code. And so what the full stack building did was more just culturally prepared people for a time when they should worry less about their functional role
Mhm.
and more about the capabilities that they have, and use them more flexibly to get the job done. And so that's been actually a really good learning, that in these big shifts, there are two things that have to happen. The mindset has to change on what needs to get done, but also the tooling itself, the stack has to upgrade. And we can talk about the stack, but the mindset part can often be the hard part. So the new skills that we've seen emerging are people who actually are unlearning the divide that they had created for themselves, that this was my job. In fact, I was on a project recently where we were doing some massive migration, and we had to do audits very fast. We had to find product
Mhm.
quality bugs in a very short period of time. And usually this is the job PMs and designers can get together and do, but we deployed Claude in addition to all of them, and designers were able to tell Claude to what to look for, what is considered a product quality bug. And so they
Mhm.
codified it. And once we did that, it accelerated how fast we were able to find the product quality issues in a migration, which
Oh,
would have taken people weeks to test and find. So I think these are the kinds of things where people are like, oh, wait, this is the same job, but I can use a new tool and apply a new type of skill to get the same or better outcome. So just the thinking of like, as a designer, I have access now and I can
yeah.
openly do these or freely do these things, which previously they would have said, hey, I need an engineer to help me build an internal tool that simulates XYZ on an Android device. It wasn't necessary anymore.
No, I think that's amazing. And providing access to those tools and more folks in the thoughts and capabilities of the products, I think is really amazing. I think I suppose I would imagine that within LinkedIn there are, certain guardrails and sort of like structures such that you can jump in and ensure that you are, following the right types of protocols, that you're like following the right sort of like checks and evals and those types of things. Is that built into how you're working day to day and everyone has access to like that platform?
Yeah, so we actually, this was also last year, we built some internal skills that perhaps are unique to us that we need more as we build products. And there were several that were focused on exactly what you said, which is even, I'm not even talking about privacy and security guardrails, which I fully trust the engineering team to build and strengthen. Even on the product guardrail side, though, like we want to make sure that everything we put out is very trustworthy. Like people can look at it and use
Yeah.
it with high confidence. And so we would do a red teaming exercise using an agent. We built an agent called the Trust Agent, which would look at your spec and poke holes at it and say, hey, this is how it could go wrong, and this is the infosec approval you will need, or this is the audit that you haven't run yet. And if that agent was given the context of multiple products before this
Mm.
one, to know what patterns to look for and what loopholes can exist. And sometimes you would find something that was going to be hard to come up with on our own. And that's actually the power for someone who's brand new to the job, who doesn't have 5 years of building products at LinkedIn, to be able to just use that skill and
Mhm.
be able to push a spec out. So there've been along the way there've been learnings like this, which I think apply uniquely to us, but I'm sure every company has a set of those skills internally as well.
Sure, but then like having that sort of historical knowledge built in is such an asset. It can go back to what you learned and apply it to any of the new things. So as far as the APM program, how does that affect, and how different is it now, and when did that start changing?
Yeah, so actually it's not called APM anymore. It's called APB, which is Associate Product Builder. And it's already changed. We have the first batch of APBs now at LinkedIn. And it's actually, both the process has changed on how we hire them, but also the people that we brought in are fundamentally different from a background perspective. So the process has changed from being focused on product interviews to actually building prototypes live. And people would code in a live session where we're not looking for like the perfect outcome, but what we're looking for is a process and how you introspect on what the answer is, and how do you iterate and work with AI to build something. And most of these people have actually built products before they joined LinkedIn, built products that had reached some reasonable scale. And so they have experience in working with the technology already, and they're bringing that culture into LinkedIn. And the useful thing about that is that they're young and they're very early adopters. So
Yeah.
they can be agents of change inside the organization. And if you start from that at the very bottom of the chart, then quickly as they grow, they're bringing that skill set and that kind of mindset to the organization. So I'm very excited to see how it evolves. But APBs have been a fantastic addition to the team already. So even at this level, it's paying off. I think as it compounds and grows over time, the ROI will be even better.
Yeah, we just recently did a podcast with Marty. He was our last guest, and we were talking about the product model and really around coaching all throughout product, like having really great mentors and having really great folks, because there is that instinct and experience beyond just sort of like what is the product that you build, but being able to see around the corner, being able to understand the customer fully. Like, how do you fill that gap? Or maybe you have a different point of view on it within LinkedIn. If you have folks who are mostly building, what is the mentorship or advocacy model at LinkedIn?
I don't think that has changed as much yet, and perhaps it will. It's hard to say, but we have something called Product University internally, where we have people who are in the product org share with everyone else what their learnings are, and we have, as you can imagine, many sessions now around evals or building AI products or using certain tools. We actually did one couple of weeks ago on women who cloud code, and it was really cool to see people come together in a program where some women who had done more advanced things were able to teach everyone else. And then we also have separately a mentorship program where we match people, both mentees and mentors, based on who they're looking for and what support they can provide. So we haven't seen that shift as much, but what we are, I think the root of your question is like, the people who are doing this stuff and they are becoming the internal champions, how do we make sure they have the space to show the work and bring everyone along? And
Yes.
and I think that's at the moment happening organically, where people are bringing these programs to the foreground, where like, hey, I'm happy to show you my setup, or I'm happy to show you how I used AI to do ABC. And there's a lot of open learning and open sharing that the teams are doing, which is what you need, because it's so much better when the community shares it with each other versus when it becomes a tops down mandate. So I think the goal for leaders right now should be to make sure everyone is in the arena. It's not about perfection. I think at this point in time, it's mostly about participation. Like everyone has an in, everyone has the access and tools. What they use it for, maybe very basic to all, very advanced, that's okay. But if you're not even in the arena, then it's going to be very hard to catch up. So the goal is just to bring everyone to the main stage, and then everyone will obviously figure out what is their pace as well as what their product needs. So that's been the focus for the last several months.
Oh, I think that's amazing. It's almost some folks might think that it's ironic to some degree that having the AI tools at hand is creating more collaboration with the humans across lines, which is actually, I think very optimistic. And it's also something that's very, I think, inspiring in a way, to have organizations and groups of people who are working across the lines to build together. And it's not about like, I'm just going to have my AI do this for me, and we're going to ship in sort of silos because we can now. It's really collaborative. So as far as like your leadership style, you spoke a little bit about that, but like now that it is about like sort of building that community, and the skill sets are a little bit different that you're managing, but also what consumers are looking for as well. How have you had to adjust your leadership style, let's say in the last 2 years? And was there anything really major in terms of those changes, even more recently?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the demo first culture, and then pushing everyone to participate and embrace these tools. That's become sort of the day to day. I remember, I mean, even now, if someone has not yet set up their system, I'd be sending them links, pointing them to people. I think that's the job of the leaders right now, to make sure that everyone understands the need of the hour and what this moment means. Because this is the moment that will create the role models that will lead to more and more adoption. The other thing that we've seen, and this came after the full stack building cultural shift internally, is when people start using AI tools, so let's say your AI tool adoption is growing inside a company, the next thing that happens is the people who are at the forefront of it will start pushing you to do more. Like they need a bigger stack, or they need more tokens, or they need better integration, or they need approval on something that doesn't exist. And so, and in a good way, like I think there were so many times when people say, well, why don't we have that yet? And so the job now has become, how do you harden that AI stack to the point where it's easily usable by a larger group of people? So it's AI enablement at scale versus AI enablement for the early adopters. And so at the scale version, which is I think where we are now in terms of, okay, we have to get to the next level. We think of it in three parts, which is access, context, and skills. So access is all about, you should have the data and the tools and the access that you need to get started. Context is, I think, the most important part, which is for the work you're doing, for the work your team is doing, what all do you need to be able to do it more effectively with AI? Otherwise, it's going to feel like additional overhead. As an example, I loved what one team has done. They've created a shared GitHub repo of the context across engineering, product, and design, which means the design system is loaded in, the product specs are loaded in, the past code-based changes are loaded in, and the interest, they have like so many markdown files. One of the ones that I find fascinating is the one where they have put in all the previous decisions they made, and then also put in decisions that in this case Claude should not litigate. Like this is like, don't change this, and that's useful, right? Because otherwise you're going back and forth explaining why no, this, we cannot do that, we cannot do this idea. When all the context is loaded in one place, all the members of the team are operating from the same starting point every single day. And that's fascinating. So that's been great. And on the skills side, we talked about it briefly, but some skills are unique to some teams. Some skills are, more universal for the entire organization. But one team, for example, has a skill on writing the weekly report that they have to form up, and they have a unique style of writing it. And because the context is fed in and the feedback loops have been put together, the weekly report can be generated by Slack. And I think it's great to get to these, whatever feels like overhead in your team, to get to those kinds of things using AI. Why would you not do it? Another team has done one pagers, whereas there's a skill for writing a one pager on the idea, which again is unique to them, but also potentially could be valuable across the organization. So all this to say, like, every team has been at a different stage of access, context, and skills. And now the goal is, how do we bring all of the best practices across these into a single stack that everyone can use, including things like evals, which every team was kind of doing on their own, that this must be the way. And so now figuring out, what is the playbook, what is the central best practices playbook for evals, which is loaded in potentially as context for each team, so that they don't have to do the work from ground up. And that's a fun stage to be in. It's very different from trying to change mindset. It's about coming up with the right stack for everyone to use.
Absolutely. And I have to imagine that that's going to be constantly changing.
Correct.
For a long time, and being able to week to week, even as the model starts to improve. Do you see that as the velocity as you guys are developing? Because it seems like in order to scale, I think that's the challenge. How do you scale while it's still
changing on you?
quickly?
Yeah. I agree. I think yes, we have to be fundamentally flexible in all of this because it's very possible that one step of this process just goes away. Or, what happened with Claude Design too? Like prior to this, there was a lot of focus on Figma Make, for example, internally, or connecting Claude with Figma with the right design system. Maybe Claude Design will just change all of that because you can now do it all in one place versus.
Yeah.
So these are the things you have to stay very open to. And so what may work for one company may not work for the other.
True.
But I think to your point about how fast, I think it's like every 2 weeks, maybe it will become every week where we have to have these debates. And then I think the other thing that's happening in terms of velocity is that engineering teams are able to move faster because obviously there's a ton of leverage that these tools are providing, which I think is going to put pressure upstream on product builders, so designers and PMs, to come up with very high fidelity specs pretty fast. And I think that is actually a great outcome from all of this, that, oh, there are more ideas we can test now. And so every unit of the spec work that needs to happen just needs to happen faster. And so we have to figure out how AI can help that, because ultimately that's what's going to go and flow through the whole pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, the thought, the ratios are between
Changing.
PM and engineering are changing, and that PM is the bottleneck. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
I think that, first of all, I think it is great. This is a good thing that we will be able to see more ideas out in the wild because we are creating the bottleneck at the top of the funnel, not the bottom end of the funnel. And I do think that this means that the role of the product builder changes fundamentally. The craft, the work they have to do changes. And also, I think this goes back to a point about human behavior. The more ideas that people play with, I think the better it will be in the end in terms of finding the best ones, as it always is. So I feel like all of us need to give every product permission to test and fail right now to find what's the best thing for us as human beings, in terms of whatever use case it is that we are trying to do. And so I do think that's overall a good thing. It's going to feel chaotic for a little bit, but I think it will settle somewhere in a good place.
No, I agree with that. At our conference last year, we had Clairvaux like sort of having that call to action to the community of like, women, you should be having FOMO and getting in there and like getting involved. So we have have had a lot of opportunities with hackathons and like group learning, things that
Yeah.
you've mentioned as well. And do you think that, so sometimes with like major tech shifts, some of those networks and early access change, and with AI, it's all out there. And so what are you seeing as far as even like women in tech or other folks in tech? Like, do you feel that everyone is coming and learning, or do you think that there needs to be an extra push? Because I almost feel like because everything is so new right now, that access and that opportunity is all there, and we all need to sort of jump in there and get involved, because I think that, to your point, the more ideas, the more perspectives, it's that same type of thing that go into what are we building, the better the things are going to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Carmen, that these platform shifts reset things in a big way. And I feel like there's a couple of things, right? There are a few steps in the process. The first one is just who has access.
Yeah.
Does everyone have access? And I think in these big tech companies, at least, I think access is not going to be the problem. So big companies will not have that, but the people who I know just at large may even have problem at the access level. So we need to figure out how we open up the access to as diverse a population as possible. The second one, I think, is, once you have access, how much confidence do you have in what you're putting out there? And this usually like is a gap for a lot of people, especially for women, where it's you have the tools right in front of you and you still think that you cannot do it, which is a huge problem, right? And so I feel like there needs to be the right amount of push that, no, it's this, as what we're saying, like this is the moment to try and experiment and fail and celebrate regardless, because it's a whole new paradigm. And then the final, I think, step is what emerges from all of this is who are becoming the role models. And that's what Clairvaux was saying, that
Yeah.
happening right now, the visible role models anyway is not a diverse set of people at the moment. And how do we change that? So I think as leaders in the industry, it's possible to do that, but it's important to really focus and know that, have you given everyone access? Have you given everyone the same level of encouragement? And then on the other side, are you seeing role models emerge across, the spectrum that you wanted? Because if you're not, then something is broken in the first two steps, because
Absolutely.
people are not pushing the same in the same way. So I mean, to your question, like, am I seeing it? I think inside LinkedIn, I haven't yet, because I have seen a lot of people embrace it, and especially like I've seen so many women PMs uh, do this internally at LinkedIn and also post about it and
Yeah,
openly and publicly. I'm certain that that's not the case everywhere either. So I think there is work to be done, but it's really important. This is a very fundamental time in this change. So it's important to pay attention to that.
absolutely.
100%.
I mean, so I would say like even for our community, for like a senior PM who's like really strong in the traditional craft, but is feeling sort of behind on AI, and let's say they're not like at one of the large enterprise organizations. Well, like what should she stop doing and then immediately start doing instead? If
Yeah.
especially if it's not, a lot of organizations or smaller organizations as well don't have like that infrastructure of learning. A lot of it is like go figure it out and bring it back. So what advice do you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all learning at the same time. The advice I got from someone, and it was very practical, is she said, like, take 3 days off. And I was like, what three? What is unique about three? And the first day was to set things up, to your point, like the infrastructure that you need to even have all the pieces work together is not trivial. And so it's important to spend the time on it, get the help you need, spend the time with like somebody who has a setup so that you can work with them and figure out your own. And then days 2 and 3 are to build. And the second day, especially, is to build something really small. I remember we did this as part of Product University. We sent out examples of like what can you do as a simple thing to learn how to use this. And the first version of that was, uh, if you've seen the desktop of any PM, it's filled with screenshots. I'm sure you've done this, right? It's just filled with screenshots. And so you can have Claude organize your screenshots, which is a big deal. As a PM, like, I never do it. I think mine were like overlapping with each other at one point, and there was no way to find anything useful.
Mhm.
But that's a very simple type of assistant to build, to understand what it can do for you. The other day, my eng partner and I we had an internal hackathon, and we had to judge so many hacks that had come in, and so many ratings from different judges who have different calibration. Like, someone's 5 and someone's
Sure.
1. And so we made this small assistant to say, hey, Claude, like, recalibrate for how these judges are judging, because everyone has a different scale. And so that's a much better way, in my opinion, to finalize the winners of the hackathon versus just
Sure.
to everyone. So I think these are very, very small instances of using AI, and then you can take it all the way to writing an eval, to building an agent, and that can be the more advanced version of the story. But I think as a senior, actually, it doesn't matter if you're senior or junior. Uh, take the time to set things up, because that's usually the biggest hurdle. But then do something super small so you can see the power, and then it would be very hard to go back, because I think once you see it, it becomes very real that, oh, like, I can do it. I have an engineering background, and I decided at some point in my undergrad that I'm never going to make an actual engineer. So I'm going to go another way. But like now, it doesn't feel that way
Yeah.
necessarily. So I think it's important to just do it once, some small step, and then it becomes hard to unsee.
Yeah, that is so true. I love that. A few questions that sort of dig into who you are as a leader. What's a one time when you had a really challenging leadership decision or stance that you had to take and you didn't know what the right answer was? And whether you failed or didn't fail, what was that and how did you approach it?
About so many. I mean, I feel like we do this all the time. This is the nature of the
Yeah,
job.
I know.
I will pick one of my favorites from a long time ago, and this is not necessarily a leadership or nothing. It's just product, right? Like, I remember building this product with one engineer and one web developer that I had a lot of conviction in, and we got some support. We built it, we put it out there in the world. On a Tuesday morning, I think my manager wrote the blog post announcing, "Oh, we're launching this product." On Tuesday night, some reporter in LA wrote a scathing article about how LinkedIn is doing this, selling your data for blah blah. It was really the wrong perception of the product.
Yeah.
But because this was pre-IPO, like this was a sensitive time for the company. So on Wednesday morning, the very next day, my manager wrote the blog post of sorry, we're sunsetting the product because of it's just the wrong perception. But my
Right.
one of my first few products, it lasted less than 24 hours, and
Oh
I
my
thought this
God.
must surely be the end of it all. But here was a lesson in all of this. I think there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to building products. I mean, there are of course guardrails, but there's really no right or wrong. And so I sat down with my manager, who was up until last week the CEO of LinkedIn, Ryan Roslansky, and he was so kind. And I said, well, what does this mean now? And he said, now this is what's going to happen. We're going to get a bunch of inbound from people. Half of it will be hate mail because they hated what we did, and the other half are going to be job opportunities because someone else is trying to do this. So there are both sides of the coin where like you may be working on something that is belongs to a different time, different segment, different industry, and it will work just fine. But you just happen to have one ingredient missing. But it's important to know that as a product person because, yeah, the next couple of years are going to feel very choppy. But if you are at the heart of a builder and you believe in impact through products, you have to know that there is no right or wrong answer. So nothing, no, but there is no reason to take it personally. It's all about finding the learning and moving forward. So I always look back to that one as like, oh, that I thought that was the end of it all, but it was just the beginning, and that's always fun to reflect on.
No, I love that. You have to find what is the learning when you have to go through something really hard. There's something that's going to come out of it, and to not focus on that, immediate, thing that didn't go your way. Okay. So for you, what
Yeah.
is AI tool that you use daily for yourself? I'm not talking about like sort of your within LinkedIn, but is there anything in your personal life that you're using AI tools for?
Yeah, I mean, so Claude, for sure. I think that's probably the biggest chunk. I use ChatGPT a lot. I've also started loving Whisperflow. I think
Mhm.
I mentioned this earlier. I have a thesis that language barriers have really gotten in the way of people thriving and
Mhm.
growing because English at some point became the language of the business world.
Right.
Everyone has access to that. But secondly, I think actually it's not just even about English, it's also the accent. Like I mean, I've seen this in my own life, but where people come from all over the world to work in the Bay Area. When someone has an accent or is communicating in English and it's not their natural language, they may not be able to get their ideas across as effectively, even though their idea may be better than almost anyone else's in the
Yeah,
room.
yes.
And I hate that because it's such a wasted opportunity. But I do think with products like Whisperflow, where like you can communicate far more easily and smoothly, I do think there is a chance. So I don't know, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that in a maybe within the next year, just like, a few years ago, taking out your camera and taking a selfie would have been an odd thing to do, and now everyone does it. I think there will be a world where people will be just talking to their devices, and it's going to feel very natural. And I think that is fantastic with respect to breaking down language barriers. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I love that.
We'll see if it plays out.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then finally, like for our community of women in product, like you shared so many great words of wisdom. Any like for sort of final advice or outlooks for the community in this AI era, and as we move to building versus just being product managers.
I mean, I think the words I would say the most is embrace it. But as a stat, I will share one that I think we published in an economic graph report recently. 70% of the skills in any job that we do will change by 2030, which is just 4 years away.
Yeah.
But in the next 4 years, 70% of whatever you're doing in your job is going to change. So you have two options. One is start changing them now, so you get to shape them, and the other one is don't do anything and be shaped by them. And so it's important, I think, for people to not worry as in like they're not changing tomorrow, but they're changing. So you might as well be part of the group of people that are actively influencing what the new version of this job looks like or a different variant of this job looks like. And I think many people are actively breaking down the tasks that they do in their jobs to figure out what categories their tasks are falling in, what will change with AI, what will not change with AI. And I think that's a prudent thing to reflect on and start doing. But for the most part, it's just embrace it and try to shape it, because this is all of our collective futures. And hopefully like everyone on the other side feels like they had a part to play in it, as opposed to they were played by it.
That's amazing. Well, this went by so fast. I could probably talk to you for another hour, but we are up on time, and I'm so excited that you're here. So many great stories, and I think words of advice and some actionable things for folks in the community. And thank you so much, Gyanda, for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is an original production of Women in Product. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Women in Product YouTube channel. Leave us a review so that others can discover us, or share this episode with others. Original music provided by Jimmy Hahn.